Welcome to another deep dive, this time into the magical heart of the Forgotten Realms.
Sounds exciting.
We're going to be unraveling the mysteries of Mistral and the Weave,
The weave.
using some excerpts from the Forgotten Realms wiki. We've got entries on magic itself, Mistral, Mystra, even the Weave.
Really diving deep this time.
I like it. Our goal is to figure out how magic actually works in this
A
world.
worthy goal.
We'll trace it all back to its origins, meet those powerful goddesses who embody magic.
Mistral and Mystra.
Right. You got it. And explore what happens when it all goes sideways.
When magic goes wrong, things can get pretty messy.
That's an understatement. But really, who hasn't wondered where magic comes from?
Or what would happen if, poof, it just vanished.
Exactly.
It's a question with huge implications. Magic is so deeply woven into the Forgotten Realms, it's almost like asking, what if the air we breathe suddenly changed?
I see what you mean.
It would impact every creature, every spell, every corner of existence.
It all begins, of course, with a creation myth, like most good stories do.
Where'd they find this one?
The wiki details the story of Lord Io, the overgod, creating the universe.
Classic.
And from this act, the twin goddesses Shar and Saloon emerge. Darkness and light, locked in eternal struggle.
Classic duality.
It's their conflict that creates the world of Abitorol.
And something even more extraordinary.
Let me guess, magic.
You know it.
Their clashing energies give birth to Mistral, the first goddess of magic. Imagine the raw power of light and dark colliding, giving rise to something totally new.
That's quite a visual.
But what's truly fascinating is that Mistral doesn't just use magic, she is the weave itself.
So she's not just a powerful sorcerer, she's like the source code of magic. That's a pretty big deal.
Exactly. The weave is this vast, intricate web of energy that permeates the world, and Mistral is the weaver, shaping and controlling it.
Wow.
All arcane spellcasters draw their power through this weave, making Mistral the ultimate gatekeeper of arcane magic. The wiki paints this picture of Mistral as this woman with hair like a rainbow, beautiful and unpredictable. It's almost like her personality reflects the chaotic nature of magic itself.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
And her power.
Oh, immense.
I wouldn't want to cross her.
We're talking unlimited spellcasting ability. The power to choose who can access magic. And even control over time itself.
Time travel.
She actually created a spell, Time Conduit, specifically to prevent mortals from abusing time travel.
She thought of everything.
Mistral understood the delicate balance of magic, and she worked to protect it.
Makes sense. That level of power is awe-inspiring, but also raises questions. If one being has that much control, what happens when it's challenged? The Forgotten Realms has a story for that, right?
So, of course. It's called Karsus's Folly, and it's a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition.
Oh, this sounds good.
The wiki tells the tale of the Netherese Empire, this civilization of incredibly powerful mages.
I've heard of them.
They were facing a terrifying threat, the Fair Rim, creatures that drain magic itself. Enter Karsus, an archwizard with a plan so bold he could either save his people or destroy everything.
High stakes. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting.
Hold on tight.
Karsus developed this spell, Karsus's avatar. It was supposed to temporarily make him a god. Talk about swinging for the fences.
He wasn't messing around.
What happened?
He essentially tried to steal Mistral's power,
Bold move.
believing he could control the weave and defeat the Farum. But wielding that much power comes with consequences.
What kind of consequences?
The spell worked, but the influx of energy was too much for Karsus to handle,
Oh.
like trying to contain a supernova in a teacup. The weave started to unravel, threatening to destroy all magic.
So Mistral had to intervene.
Yes. Faced with the potential destruction of the weave, Mistral made the ultimate sacrifice. She absorbed Karsus's power, taking the full force of the spell upon herself.
So she basically saved the world.
She did. The result. Karsus was destroyed, the Netherese Empire fell, and magic vanished from the world for a time.
Wow, what a chain reaction. It's a powerful reminder that even with the best intentions, meddling with forces beyond your comprehension can have disastrous consequences. But the story of magic doesn't end there, does it?
Not at all. From the remnants of Mistral's essence, a new goddess of magic arose, Mystra. She inherited Mistral's power and responsibility, becoming the new weaver of magic.
A new era of magic, then.
In a way, yes.
So how is she different from Mistral?
Mystra, while still incredibly powerful, took a more structured approach to magic.
More organized.
The wiki describes her as more lawful, focused on order and balance within the weave. She saw what happened when power went unchecked, so she implemented stricter rules for spellcasting to prevent another Karsus-level catastrophe.
She was all about preventing magic from becoming too wild and unpredictable.
Precisely. She didn't want to stifle magic's potential, but knew that boundaries were necessary. Think of it like this. Mistral was the artist who created the raw materials, the paints and canvas. Mystra is the architect, taking those materials and building something structured, purposeful.
I like that analogy, and part of that structure involved appointing champions, right?
You're thinking of the Magisters.
Right. Figures like Asuth and Savras.
Legendary mages in their own right. They became extensions of Mistra's will, helping to enforce her rules and maintain balance. It's like having a team of highly skilled magical engineers making sure the weave machine runs smoothly.
So we've got this new era of magic with a new goddess at the helm and a more structured approach to spellcasting. But let's get back to the basics for a second. The wiki makes a clear distinction between arcane magic and divine magic.
Right. They're fundamentally different.
Can you explain that?
Of course. Arcane magic is essentially any magic that isn't directly granted by a deity. It's the magic of wizards, sorcerers, those who study the arcane arts, all channeling their power through the weave.
So it's like accessing a universal power grid, with Mystra controlling the flow of energy. But the wiki stresses that the weave isn't magic itself, right? It's more like a conduit.
Exactly. A subtle but important point. Imagine a vast, intricate loom. The threads represent raw, magical energy, and the weave is the structure that allows those threads to be woven into spells and magical effects.
So mages are essentially learning the patterns, the weaving techniques that allow them to manipulate this energy.
A perfect analogy. And what's even more fascinating is that there are multiple weaving styles, so to speak. The wiki briefly touches on alternative magical systems, like thaumaturgy, which uses different techniques to channel magic without directly accessing the weave.
It's like saying there are other ways to generate electricity besides relying on the power grid. And then there's psionics, which is a whole other ballgame.
Right, that operates outside the weave entirely.
It really highlights the sheer diversity of magic in the Forgotten Realms.
We often focus on the weave because it's so central to arcane magic, but it's not the only game in town.
Okay, so we've got arcane magic flowing through the weave, but what about divine magic? Where does that fit in?
Divine magic is the power granted by deities to their followers, like clerics and paladins. It's not a direct connection to the weave, it's fueled by faith and prayer. Think of it as drawing power from a specific divine generator rather than the universal grid.
So a cleric's power is determined by their god and the strength of their belief.
Precisely. And each deity has specific domains, areas of influence that dictate what kind of spells their followers can cast. For instance, a cleric of a war god would have access to spells very different from those of a cleric devoted to healing.
Makes sense, like divine specialization.
Exactly. And this brings us to a fascinating question. If the weave is so vital to arcane magic, what happens when it's disrupted? Because the Forgotten Realms has seen its share of magical upheavals.
Right. The wiki mentions periods where things get a little messy, like when the gods were forced to walk the earth as mortals. During this tumultuous time, Mistra's avatar was destroyed.
And the consequences were immediate and far-reaching.
How so?
Wild magic zones, areas where the weave became erratic and unpredictable, began popping up across the world. Imagine spells backfiring, magical effects going haywire, the very fabric of reality becoming unstable.
Sounds chaotic.
It was a chaotic and dangerous time for anyone reliant on magic.
And then there's the Spellplague, this cataclysmic event that nearly unraveled the weave entirely. The wiki describes a decade of wild magic, unpredictable surges of energy, widespread magical chaos. It really drives home the point that the weave, for all its power, is fragile.
Precisely. It shows us that even the most fundamental forces in the universe can be disrupted, even broken. And it raises some intriguing questions about what happens next.
Welcome back. So last time we left off with the Spellplague and this pretty messed up weave. Where do we even go from there?
It's a fascinating period, really. The weave, once this beautifully intricate tapestry of magical energy, is suddenly in tatters. Like, imagine those threads, once so carefully interwoven, now frayed, knotted, full of holes.
That's a pretty vivid image.
But even in all this chaos, magic finds a way, right?
The wiki mentions these individuals who can, like, manipulate raw magic without even relying on the weave.
Oh, you mean the spellfire wielders?
Yeah, Spellfire. It sounds, well, incredibly powerful, almost primal.
It is. Think of it this way. The weave acts as a sort of buffer. It makes arcane magic more predictable, controllable. Spellfire just bypasses all that. It's raw, untamed, like trying to harness lightning in your bare hands.
So incredibly dangerous then.
It can be, yes. The wiki describes spellfire as potent but volatile. Those who wield it often struggle to maintain control, risking unpredictable, even destructive outcomes.
Yikes.
But for those who can master it, spellfire offers a freedom and power that traditional Wheeze magic simply can't match.
It's almost like those who can wield spellfire become living embodiments of the chaos that followed the Spellplague. Makes you wonder if this ability was always present, or if it only emerged after the weave was fractured.
That's a question that scholars and mages are still debating.
What are the different theories?
Well, some believe that spellfire represents a more ancient form of magic, something that predates even the weave. Others argue that it's a direct result of the Spellplague, a manifestation of the weave's broken state.
So two very different schools of thought then.
Exactly.
So while a weave may be damaged, it's not entirely gone.
Right. Think of it like a tree struck by lightning. The trunk may be shattered, but the roots remain. And with time, those roots can send up new shoots, allowing the tree to regenerate.
I see. So there's hope for the weave yet.
There's always hope. And speaking of hope, remember Mystra. The wiki mentions that even though her physical form was destroyed, she eventually returns. I guess some goddesses are just too stubborn to stay dead, especially when they're tied to a force as powerful as magic.
You've got that right.
It really speaks to the enduring nature of magic itself, doesn't it? Even when it seems extinguished, even when the structures that contain it are broken, it finds a way to reassert itself.
So how did she manage to come back?
Well, it wasn't a solo act. Remember those special servants of Mystra, the Chosen?
Oh, right. The legendary figures like Elminster and the Seven Sisters.
Incredibly powerful mages, each granted unique abilities by Mystra. They played a crucial role in her return.
How so?
They acted as focal points for her scattered essence, almost like lightning rods, drawing her power back into the world.
It's a beautiful image, really. The goddess and her chosen, working together to mend the fractured weave. It highlights the interconnectedness of magic in this world. It's not just about gods or mortals, it's about the interplay between them.
Exactly. And remember, we talked about how Mystra implemented rules to prevent the misuse of magic. Those rules, while born out of good intentions, also had the unintended consequence of stifling innovation for some mages.
So they started looking for loopholes.
In a way, yes. They began looking for alternative ways to access and manipulate magic, leading to a resurgence of interest in systems like thaumaturgy.
So thaumaturgy, which uses like symbols, geometry, even song to channel magic, became a way for mages to explore the potential of magic outside the confines of the weave.
Precisely. It's like saying, okay, we can't build a skyscraper with these specific materials, but what if we use bamboo or adobe instead? Thaumaturgy became a way to push the boundaries of magical theory and practice, leading to new discoveries and possibilities.
And there's even a school of thaumaturgy dedicated to wild magic, right? Tapping into that chaotic energy that we saw emerge after the Spellplague.
Exactly. Some mages, drawn to the raw power of wild magic, saw it not as a threat, but as an untapped resource. They developed techniques to harness this unpredictable energy, even using it to fuel their spells.
That's wild. It makes you wonder about the nature of magic itself. If there are all these different ways to access and manipulate it, is the weave truly essential? Or is it just one way, maybe the most common way, that mortals interact with this fundamental force?
It's a question that has no easy answer. Think of it this way. Electricity is a natural phenomenon. We've developed technologies to harness and control it. The power grid is one way to do that, but it's not the only way. Batteries, generators, even solar panels offer alternative methods.
So the weave is like a magical power grid, a structure we've built to make sense of and control this force. But it's not the only structure, and maybe not even the most fundamental one.
Exactly. And that's what makes magic in the Forgotten Realms so compelling. It's a force of nature, yes, but it's also a reflection of ourselves, of our choices, our understanding of the universe.
But it's also important to remember that magic can be a double-edged sword.
Oh, absolutely.
The wiki also mentions the shadow weave, this corrupted counterpart to the weave, controlled by Shar.
Ah, yes, the shadow weave. Can't forget that one.
If the weave represents a balance between light and darkness, the shadow weave is its twisted reflection.
A dark mirror, if you will.
And just as potent, it seems.
While the weave was fractured by the Spellplague, the shadow weave remained intact, even strengthened by the chaos. It's a constant reminder that magic, for all its beauty and wonder, can also be dangerous, seductive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the magical heart of the Forgotten Realms. We've covered a lot of ground, from creation myths to fallen empires, and even a goddess who came back from, well, not being a goddess anymore. But as we wrap up, there's one more piece of this puzzle we need to examine.
And what's that?
The shadow weave.
Aye.
It's been lurking in the background this whole time, like a dark counterpart to everything we've been discussing.
It is a fascinating and dangerous aspect of magic in the Forgotten Realms.
The wiki describes it as a reflection of the weave, but twisted, corrupted, almost like a dark mirror reflecting the darker impulses of, well, everyone.
A very apt description.
But what's the true cost of wielding this kind of magic?
That's the question every magic user must confront.
Because it's easy to be seduced by power.
Oh, absolutely. The allure of manipulating forces beyond mortal comprehension. But as we've seen, magic, especially when drawn from the Shadow Weave, can have a profound impact on the wielder.
It changes them.
Think of it this way. The weave, even with its vulnerabilities, represents a balance between light and darkness, order and chaos. It's like a river flowing within its banks, nourishing the land.
Okay, I'm following.
The Shadow Weave, on the other hand, is like a torrent, powerful but destructive. It erodes the very foundations it flows over.
So a mage using shadow weave magic, what happens to them?
It's a slippery slope.
Do they become corrupted?
The wiki suggests that prolonged exposure to the Shadow Weave can warp the soul. It twists perceptions, amplifies negative emotions. It's like staring into an abyss for too long. Eventually, the abyss starts staring back at you.
That's creepy. And it's not just about individual corruption, right? What about the impact on the world around them?
That's a valid concern. Remember those wild magic zones we discussed?
Where magic goes haywire.
Exactly. The wiki notes that the Shadow Weave is not only immune to those chaotic energies, it actually thrives in them. It's like a parasite, feeding on the instability of the weave. So a mage using Shadow Weave magic in those zones could inadvertently make things much, much worse, amplifying the chaos, the unpredictability.
It's kind of terrifying when you think about it.
It does highlight the interconnectedness of magic in this world. Every spell cast, every magical effect sends ripples through both the weave and the Shadow Weave. It's a delicate ecosystem, and even seemingly small acts can have far-reaching consequences.
We talked about how Mystra created rules to govern magic to prevent another Karsus. But even the best intentions can backfire, can't they?
Exactly. The wiki suggests that Mystra's restrictions, while preventing catastrophic misuse of the weave, also limited the potential for innovation. Some mages felt stifled, their creativity constrained by these rules, so they turned to alternative systems, like thaumaturgy, or even more dangerously, the Shadow Weave.
So it becomes this sort of like rebellion, a rejection of the established order.
It's a reminder that magic, like any powerful force, can't be easily controlled or contained. There will always be those who seek to push the boundaries, to explore the forbidden, regardless of the risks. But there's also hope. Mystra's return, the slow healing of the weave, suggests that even in the face of darkness and chaos, there's a resilient force pushing back.
That even when things seem really bad, magic finds a way to rebalance itself.
It speaks to the enduring nature of magic itself. It's a force of creation, of possibility. Even when twisted or corrupted, there's a core essence that strives for balance, for harmony.
It's almost like magic itself has its own, sense of right and wrong.
Perhaps.
It makes you realize that magic isn't just about spells and power. It's about choices, the paths we choose to follow. Do we embrace the light, knowing it might limit our potential? Or do we delve into the shadows, risking corruption and unintended consequences?
That's a question everyone in the Forgotten Realms has to grapple with, mage or not. I suppose it's a question we all face in our own lives.
And maybe that's the most important takeaway from all of this. Magic is a tool, yes, but it's also a reflection of ourselves, of our values and aspirations. So listener, as we wrap up this deep dive into the mysteries of Mistral in the Weave, we leave you with this. If you were to step into the world of the Forgotten Realms, what path would you choose? Would you be a weaver of light, a master of shadows, or perhaps something else entirely? The choice and the consequences are yours. Thanks for joining us.